I have even greater respect, even greater appreciation for you asking the tough questions, for you holding us to account, being on the receiving end. Sometimes that's not always the most comfortable thing, not always the most enjoyable thing, but it is the most necessary thing.
While Secretary of State Antony Blinken pontificated about the importance of the press and responsible media during his farewell address, two journalists in the room took exception.
300 reporters in Gaza were on the receiving end of your bombs. Why did you keep the bombs flowing when we had a deal in May?
I'm happy to address
questions. We all knew we had a deal. Everyone in this room knows we had a deal, Tony, and you kept the bombs flowing.
I'm happy to address
questions. Why did you
questions when we get a
sacrifice the
chance.
rules-based order on the mantle of your commitment to Zionism? Why did you allow my friends to be massacred? Why did you allow my friends' homes in Gaza to be destroyed when we had a deal in May?
The voice you're hearing in the video you're seeing is from journalist and Gray Zone founder Max Blumenthal. And while we admittedly have a ton of problems and disagreements with his personal political views and his reporting, that doesn't mean he's not justified in confronting Blinken and calling out our government's role in facilitating the horrors we've seen over the past year or so.
You helped destroy our religion, Judaism, by associating it with fascism.
We'll have the time
You
to
waved
take
the
questions.
white flag before
We'll have the time to take
Netanyahu.
questions at the end.
You waved the white flag before Israeli fascism.
We'll have the time to take questions
Your
at the end.
father-in-law was an Israel lobbyist. Your grandfather was an Israel lobbyist. Are you compromised by Israel? Why did you allow the Holocaust of our time to happen? How does it feel to have your legacy be genocide? How does it feel to have your legacy be genocide? You too, Matt. You smirked through the whole thing every day. You smirked through a genocide.
He even made sure to call out Blinken's press secretary, Matt Miller, on the way out. Standing up for the human rights of the oppressed should transcend political allegiances and affiliations because it is a moral issue, not a political one. Let me say that again. It is a moral issue, not a political one.
You smirked through a genocide.
Thank you. And thank you, Matt. Now, I've got a few more things to say, and I'm happy to take any question about anything, as we've done these past 4 years.
Blinken's reaction to Blumenthal's removal puts the irony of this whole situation in the spotlight. But Blumenthal wasn't the only journalist targeted for disagreeing with our country's actions in the region and laying into the outgoing Secretary of State.
Get your hands off me. 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 Answer a damn question. Do you know about the Hannibal Directive? Do you know about Israel's nuclear weapons? Everybody from the ICJ. I was sitting here quietly, and now I'm being manhandled by 2 or 3 people. You pontificate about a free press. You pontificate about a free press. You are hurting me. You are hurting me. You are hurting me.
Friend of the network, journalist Ryan Grimm, captured this video of fellow progressive journalist Sam Husseini, who's of Palestinian and Jordanian descent, getting manhandled by security after, per Grimm's eyewitness testimony, Husseini got a non-answer from Blinken about the Israel military's Hannibal Directive.
Asking questions after being told by Matt Miller that he will not answer my questions until I'm asking questions. Wasn't the point of the May 31st statement to block the ICJ orders? You blocked the ICJ orders.
Please, sir, respect the process.
Oh, respect the process. Respect the process. While everybody from Amnesty International. From Amnesty International to the ICJ saying that Israel's doing genocide and extermination, and you're telling me to respect the process. Criminal! Why aren't you in The Hague? Why aren't you in The Hague? Why aren't you in The Hague?
Finally, we've worked to modernize our diplomacy so that we're more agile, we're more effective, we're more prepared for the challenge.
You don't have to be a scholar to see the endless hypocrisy of our country's foreign policy apparatus, as Zetio News reporter Prem Thacker points out. What Blinken really meant when he told Blumenthal, Husseini, and the other journalists in the room to respect the process is to fall in line with whatever the official State Department narrative is and not challenge that narrative regardless of any available evidence. And nothing makes that attitude more clear than CNN's reaction to these altercations.
But as you heard, he was repeatedly interrupted by some cringeworthy heckling by activists. We were both sitting here pretty stunned, frankly. This is supposed to be a press conference with a room of journalists. Those were activists who were interrupting the Secretary of State when he initially was thanking the press.
You need to have a reason to be at the State Department. You need to have an appointment. You need to have press accreditation to come and go. So it's unclear who those people were. So I think there's a real security question there, and in terms of like who gets to come into the building. But what we're looking at is what was supposed to be the final press briefing by Secretary Blinken to a lot of the press who have been covering him for years. You can see a couple of them there in the front rows of the State Department, and he was interrupted in a very dramatic fashion, not just on this one occasion, but several times during this ongoing press conference.
CNN's framing of what went down during this press briefing was downright disgusting because, number one, the anchor didn't even have her facts right to begin. She talks about how the press briefing was interrupted by activists. Activists. She said that so confidently. No, they were journalists who were credentialed. That means they were supposed to be there. Okay? That means they got approved. And on top of that, you have the nerve to call their commentary cringeworthy? Excuse me? It's cringeworthy to call out our government and their role in aiding Israel and facilitating genocide against Palestine? Have you lost your mind? And both of them just so worried about the optics of the situation and not respecting or appealing to respecting the institution of the State Department and the position of Secretary of State? What are we doing here? Do we actually want real journalists? Or do we just want to shut up and accept whatever the government tells us? Hello, that is not journalism. And they had the nerve to talk about, oh, is this a security matter? Because we don't know who these people are. How did they get? It just looked really bad for CNN and how they did not focus on legitimate concerns and questions that Sam Husseini and Max Blumenthal were asking Secretary of State Antony Blinken.
We're joined now by the Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Brett Murphy, a reporter at ProPublica, where his new pieces headlined "Israel Deliberately Blocked Humanitarian Aid to Gaza. Two government bodies concluded Antony Blinken rejected them."
The two agencies that had told him that they were in fact deliberately blocking aid, one being USAID, are the foremost experts in this. As you said, they are the ones responsible for delivering humanitarian assistance into Gaza, into war zones all over the world. In addition to that, his own Refugees Bureau had made the similar conclusion that a law called the Foreign Assistance Act should have been triggered because the Israelis were restricting aid.
Are you prepared to say that war crimes have been committed by Israel?
I can't speak to individual instances. I can say, obviously, we've had concerns, more than concerns about the way Israel has conducted itself.
I think this episode in U.S. history will be viewed in the future with such horror and anger from people who know from right and wrong. Like Antony Blinken, you're going to be looked at as a monster, right? And allowing this to happen. And the journalists who sat there and stood by and didn't say anything while Sam Husseini and Max Blumenthal were carried out of the press briefing. Okay, that's not something you want on your legacy. And going forward, I don't have any hope that the Trump administration will handle this better than the Biden administration. No. For Rebel HQ, I'm Chris Williamson. We'll see you next time.